Hello Tech Trends friends, in this video we take a look at the Mac Mini with M2 Pro processor and I'll tell you what I think of it and why I think the Mac Mini is the perfect computer for almost everyone. It's been a little over 2 years since the Mac Mini with M1 processor was introduced and now we have the successor. We have almost the same design and only silver color as an option. I think the size of the Mac Mini is phenomenal for the power it offers and it's a huge benefit when you need to work somewhere different from your usual location. A desktop computer with such performance and at the same time incredible portability. So now we have all processors on offer in the desktop area. In the Mac Mini the normal M2 and the M2 Pro, and in the Mac Studio the Max and the Ultra processor. Let's go to the connections. The headphone jack also supports high impedance headphones. We have two USB-A ports with up to 5 GB per second. For Mac Mini with M2, the HDMI input supports a display up to 4K 60Hz, but the M2 Pro supports 4K up to 240Hz and 8K up to 60Hz. The M2 model has two USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports and supports up to 2 displays simultaneously, and the M2 Pro model has 4 USB-C ports and supports 3 displays simultaneously. The Mac Mini can now also be configured with 10 GB Ethernet. That's quite okay, but it would have been nice if there had been one or other connection on the front, especially an SD card reader. The Mac Mini now supports Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 instead of 5. Let's talk about the performance. It's safe to say that even the Mac Mini with M1 processor should be enough for most people, but if you need more power you can now get it with M2 processor. Here I have the version with the M2 Pro processor, which is equipped with a 10-core CPU, 16-core GPU, 16 GB of RAM and 500 GB SSD. I run some benchmark tests. Let's start with Geekbench 6. In any case, we can already say that the chips of the M2 series score more single core points than those of the M1 series. Here too, we have a good improvement over the previous models. We also see that the M2 Pro offers significantly more performance than the M2 Mac Mini. It's similar with the GPU test. The M1 Mac Mini has progressed well, but with the M2 Pro you get much more performance. Next I run Cinebench and we compare the results and can say the same thing as Geekbench. The M2 processor has a very good performance, but with the M2 Pro you get significantly more performance. While gaming wasn't a max forte in the past, custom games like Resident Evil 8 or Shadow of the Tomb Raider run quite well on the Mac Mini. In this regard, things could get very exciting in the next few years when more games are adapted to macOS. I didn't do a video editing test because I only have the Mac Mini with M2 Pro and the MacBook Pro with M1 Max processor available here at the moment. However, I previously had the MacBook Air with an M1 processor and had already edited videos with 4K. Such tasks are also not a challenge for the Mac Mini with M2 Pro, and that's now well known. As said before, the M1 Mac Mini should be enough for most people, and of course the M2 Mac Mini as well. Both processors can actually do almost everything. The M2 is just faster. However, if you need more power, you will also have this with the M2 Pro. The problem with the SSD on the Mac Minis should have gotten around by now. You should definitely not buy the 256 GB version. In the 256 GB model we only have one chip and not two 128 GB chips like in the Mac Mini with M1 processor. This means that the M1 Mac Mini's read and write speeds are better than the M2 Mac Minis. Even if the performance should still be sufficient for most applications, this fact is not correct in my opinion, and I therefore recommend the 512 GB version. Let's talk about the prices. The basic Mac Mini with M2 processor costs €699 in Europe, although it is also available from various retailers at a much lower price, making it a very fair offer. In the US you can get the Mac Mini directly from Apple for $599. The Mac Mini with M2 Pro starts at €1,549 in Europe, although there are retailers starting at around €1,400. Directly from Apple in the US, the M2 Pro Mac Mini costs $1,299, although it has to be said that you have an additional option for full performance, which also increases the price. In conclusion, one can say that the already powerful Mac Mini has been improved in many ways. More connections and a newer technology have been installed overall. I wouldn't necessarily advise a Mac Mini with an M1 owner to buy it, but for everyone else this could be the perfect desktop computer. So much value for money is a very fair offer, but what do you think? Write it in the comments, leave a like and subscribe. Until the next video, have a good time.